Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another Explore More Sundowner session. This is volume number 7, and it's cool to be talking to the Transfrontier Parks Destinations team again after an awesome chat with Glenn a couple of weeks ago. Tonight we have Eleanor joining us, who's the Marketing and Trade Relations Manager. And yeah, big welcome to you, Eleanor. Thanks for joining us.
Cheers, and thanks for the invitation.
Cool. I think, yeah, on the back of our very informative chat with Glenn a couple of weeks ago, I'm certainly looking forward to having a chat about an area that I'm not that familiar with, and that is Limpopo. And I believe you are quite the expert, so I'm looking forward to learning a few things tonight.
Well, there's a part of the country that I know quite well.
Good. So as I said to you before we started, I've been to Limpopo a few times, but more on the golf side. So I played a few rounds of golf and have experienced a safari, a Big 5 safari in the area, but you know, not gone further north than sort of Naboomspruit, which is really not even near the middle of it.
That's south.
Yeah, so there we go. So I've only stuck to the south. So yeah, I think for everybody watching this, Limpopo has a great deal to offer, not only for self-drives, but for also guided experiences. So Eleanor, I'm going to ask you to bring up the map of the area that we're going to discuss. And in particular, we're going to discuss this route called the Culture and Safari Route, which you're quite passionate about. So maybe you can give us an idea, first of all, your input about Limpopo, and how does this particular tour start off?
Well, for the sake of making the map legible, I've started it at Polokwane. But when you think about Limpopo, I tend to think about it in 4 quadrants. Mm-hmm. The line from Polokwane to Phalaborwa, which is what you're seeing at the bottom of the screen there, is the center of Limpopo, and it continues further over towards the west. The N1 is the main road that goes through from Gauteng all the way to Bike Bridge. Mm. So we're going to talk about the top northeast quadrants, the area that is bordered between Polokwane and Phalaborwa, and Kruger National Park, the Limpopo River, and the N1. That is a route I've spoken about. The rest of Limpopo is gorgeous and fascinating, and I'm not being difficult not wanting to talk about it, but it's too much. Yeah. Let's talk about this part of Limpopo as a starting point.
Cool. So for those of you who don't know, it's one of our 9 provinces, and it's sort of in the heart of South Africa. Polokwane is, sure, I'm not quite sure how far from Johannesburg, but I'll take a guess.
3 hours.
Probably 3 hours or so drive.
Yep. Very comfortable, double lane highway, easy driving. There is also an airport, so you can fly into Polokwane from OR Tambo, or you could have flown over to one of the Kruger side airports and come into the area from that direction.
Okay, so you fly into Polokwane or you drive into Polokwane, and as I said, you could either do this on a self-drive basis. I would prefer people do it on a guided basis for various reasons, but I think you get so much more out of a guide, a local guide that knows the area so well. So let's start the tour off. Then you go from Polokwane. Where would you spend your first night, and what sort of area is that?
I would probably take you in to really depends. Are people getting off an international flight and they're utterly exhausted? Have they been in the country a little while and they've got legs to do a bit of traveling for the first day? This is the glorious thing about Limpopo, is you can go to quite a few options. But let's start off number 1, Makgoba's Kloof, which is here at the bottom of the screen. Now, let me just give you a little sense of the geography of the whole area that we're going to go through before we get into it. As you'll see at the very bottom of the screen, I've marked off Northern Drakensberg, Volkberg. Now, I know those of you who are familiar with the Drakensberg, that is the better known area around Natal and the Free State, will know there's an area there called the Northern Drakensberg. But in geographic terms, that is the northern part of the central Drakensberg. This is where the real northern part of the Drakensberg is. So what we are doing is we are going on the northern side of that mountain range along a road. It's called the R71, known as Route 71. You leave Polokwane, you head due east, and quite soon, for those of you who are South Africans, you will be driving past Moriah, the home of the Zionist Christian Church, a famous church in South Africa, and then up into a beautiful forested, wooded, lush area called Magubuskloof. This is an area that has the headwaters of the Letaba River and is very popular for zip lining, canopy tours, whitewater rafting, and there's a batch of foodie options. I was really quite sad. I wanted to start my Sundowners this evening with Zwakala beer. They have a craft brewery up there that last year won the award for the best lager in South Africa, but lockdown did it to me, and no Zwakala beer available for me to buy this evening.
No, what are you drinking anyway? You have it.
I found instead my favorite cider, Loxtonia cider, have just released the African Sundowner baobab flavored cider. And that's one of the things we do in South Africa is we find lots of places for baobabs. We're going to chat baobabs a little bit later, because once we've been to Magubuskloof, we've stayed hopefully in the Woodbrush Reserve, one of the best birding destinations, Ecotourism Lodge Karisa Moya, in that area, walked through those beautiful old Afro-montane forests, visited with some of the best birding guides in South Africa. Honestly, Warren, confession time, I'm not a birder. I don't really get it, but there's something about being with absolute expert birders to start to understand just how fascinating it can be. And this is something you definitely would be doing in Magubuskloof. From there on, we're going to head north, and that arrow key was the wrong arrow key, my apologies. We're going to head north through an area called the Kudus River Valley and down into the heartland of the central parts of this area of Limpopo. It is reasonably flat. You will first go through farmlands, a lot of tomato farms, avocado farms, blueberries, chilies, some game, some cattle, quite an interesting variety, but also a fairly large number of low density villages that you're going to drive past. And you're going to end up at Nahakwe Lodge for the night. Nahakwe Lodge is owned by the local community. Beautiful, comfortable, 4-star. It has all those easy comforts that international travelers do find helpful, especially Wi-Fi and television. I can't guarantee that at all the properties we're going to stay at, but one thing I can guarantee is comfy beds everywhere, beautiful, fresh, crisp linen, good night sleep.
It looks lovely.
Nahakwe is a place that has been decored with a lot of the local art and craft, because that is the key reason you're going up into this area. We have a route there called the Rubola Art Route. The Rubola Art Route is an area where a surprisingly large number of really interesting artists have got together and developed experiences that are particularly suited for tourists to engage with artists. This is a Mancala style game called Maruba that is played at every tavern under just about every tree up in the area. If you can play Mancala, you can play Maruba. Considered one of the oldest arithmetic games in the world, if not the oldest arithmetic game in the world. But when we go into the art route, we have the opportunities as visitors to the area to actually get involved, not just walk in, look at a batch of items, say, oh, I quite like that piece, I might buy that piece, or no, I don't think I like it, and walk out. But instead, spend 3 to 4 hours with artists being taught a specific skill and going home with your own piece that you made. In this particular instance, Josh painted herself a little tablecloth using a batik style that the Tonga people use. I have seen others go home with new headdresses or material for wraparound skirts, etc., that they've made. Significant about these experiences, here's me trying to learn to make a vendor pot. Oh, my socks. I've done the ceramic thing with ceramic wheels. Sitting here on the ground, these ladies have got skill that is quite fabulous. 3 hours, you're going to end up with your pot. As you see, the lady had to fix my pots. This is me with the blue jeans on because I was producing a bit of utter wonkiness. They have harvested the clay from the local river. The graphite that they use when they eventually paint up the pots is mined in the local area. These are 100% local. Unfortunately, if you're going to go and learn how to make these pots, the practical reality of life is that it won't dry in time for you to take it home, because ceramics just take about a week to dry. But what happens is they assess your pot, they go to their pile of pots that they've made, they look for one that looks suitably similarly wonky to the one that you made, and then teach you how to glaze it, and you leave with your pot that you've made for yourself.
I think that's great. Then you're gonna pick up a guest from last week's effort, in other words, which is cool.
Absolutely.
And do they bake them in kilns, or they just leave them out in the sun?
They initially leave them out in the sun, and then they cover them in grass and twigs and fire them. So it's a flash firing. I don't quite understand the science of how it works. I just know that it happens, and they don't end up with black burnty bits on them. They are beautiful ochre red color with silver decoration on them.
Cool. And is that at Nahakwe Lodge, or is it in the area?
Just beyond. So you are going to the homes and the studios of the individual crafters. They don't come into the lodge. You could arrange musicians sometimes come into the lodge, but it's actually a far more interesting experience, in my opinion, going to the local area. Look at Thomas Kubai's studio. This gentleman with the green top is Thomas Kubai, a famous, fabulous crafter and a woodworker. And that studio of his is just about as fascinating as his craft work. So you would have lost a whole batch not going to his home to see what he's made. He will teach you the basics of Tonga crafting, as will Patrick Manyike as well. Food is an integral part of any local visitor experience, and it's specifically a done deal around the Ribola art route, which is where all these crafters live. And you'll have your first experience of what we call chicken dust. This is chicken that is cooked on the side of the road with a number of vegetables, and including just beyond the yellow mug, the ubiquitous mopani worms.
Ah, yes, yeah.
Limpopo is the part of the world where many people eat it. It is actually a caterpillar, it's not a worm. It is a major source of protein, very popular. But what's important for the guests is, notice guys, this is set out buffet style, which means you may choose whether you want the fear factor of the Mopani worm or not. I can assure those of you who've never tried it, it's quite innocuous and actually fairly tasteless. So go for the fear factor. The locals will love you forever if you do try it.
I agree with you. I think I've had it a few times. It's really not so bad. Once you get over it, it's absolutely fine. And I'm sure the chicken is fantastic.
Yeah, it's a mind issue.
Yeah,
the other
definitely.
thing that's quite interesting is I have my youngest son is a vegan, and I traveled with him a little while back, and I said to him firmly, I don't want any issues around food. And by the end of the trip, he looked at me and said, what was the worry? I ate beautifully every day. Because one of the things about local food up here is that very seldom do foods get combined. So you don't get milk put into the vegetable and cheese put over the pup, etc. Everything is presented singularly, and it is up to the person dishing up to decide what they want. So I can tell you from practical experience, all dietary requirements can be accommodated in this local area. And it's sitting and eating with the locals is quite fabulous. The tradition up here amongst the locals is to eat with your hands. As you can see from the photograph, knives and forks are provided as an option if you're not comfortable with that. But our guides will actually sit with you and show you the techniques that they use. And it generates fascinating conversations about issues around digestion, about social norms, about customs, etc. So really brings you close to everybody in the process.
Okay.
Music is a major part of any great experience in Africa, in my opinion. And on the Ribola Art Route, we have some fabulous musicians. Most of the instruments they use are made by themselves.
Yeah.
They will have a routine, a bit of a concert, but the key issue for them is, next step is they're going to pull you in, and each guest who's there is going to be taught to play one of the instruments, and you're going to be making music. So there we go. You've got your djembe.
I'm going to fit in right in there, like no problem. I'm ready. I'm ready. I think it's cool for guests to get involved in this sort of thing. And once you start, I know from previous experience, they absolutely love it. It doesn't matter if you don't think you can keep any sort of rhythm. It's a wonderful experience, and it's all how the locals handle it. So I'm pretty sure these guys are experts getting the best out of it.
This chap with the yellow and grey striped t-shirt and the reddish hat sitting down there, his name is Gift Mukari. Gift is a rapper, and Gift does lots of electronic music. And I think if my son, who was 21 then, could have disappeared off with Gift for a week, he would have gone. He said to me at the end of the trip, he said, this time with the musicians was absolutely fabulous. And that's one of the things that makes this whole area of the Ribola Art Route very interesting if you have multi-generational families traveling, or even people who have slightly different interests. You can send people off to do different activities on the same day, because these folk all live very close to each other. So it's not that you're all forced to go off and make a tsonga cloth. If that's not what you want to do, you can choose one of the other activities, and you can get popped off, variously at the different studios.
Okay, I mean, that's a good point. So if you do have families that are traveling together, we could split them into, whatever they're interested, be it art or music or building something or woodwork.
Yeah,
okay,
precisely.
cool.
And most of the activities take up about half a day comfortably. If you're doing a highly pressurized activity itinerary, you could push it through a bit faster, but usually the experience loses for being pushed too fast. Don't try, rather do fewer and just have a really grand time while you're at it.
Yeah, agreed.
So
okay.
having left the Ribola Art Route, which was down here, you can see my mouse, can't you?
Yes.
We'll take you up through the town of Louis Trichardt and up along what is known as the Witplach Road, through to visit the famous sites of the Venda traditional, excuse the spelling mistake, life, to stay at a place called Fundudzi. Now, Fundudzi is one of the great sacred areas of the Venda people of South Africa. It is, the Venda people are fairly closely related to the Shona people of Zimbabwe. Yep. They are the most northerly group of people in South Africa, and our current president, Cyril Ramaphosa, is a Venda, just to give some context. Fundudzi camp has 5 rondawels. These round units are called rondawels. Traditionally, they would just have a single room inside, but ours have got a nice, sneaky, comfortable little ensuite that's been built into them. So inside, you're going to have 2 comfy twin beds with an ensuite with a shower, a flush toilet, and hot and cold water. So you have the comforts tucked in. The area around Fundudzi is extraordinarily beautiful. There's a fairly high rainfall. It is at the edge of the second range of mountains which you're going to experience, which are called the Soutpansberg. And there's a fairly high level of rainfall. So we have forests up here. Just below this camp, you can't quite see them in the distance, are tea plantations, the Chivadzi tea plantations. Beautiful, lush, everybody has fruit trees in their gardens, mangoes, avos, bananas in their gardens, and topiary is highly popular in the local area.
Okay. Here we almost tropical. Sorry to interrupt, but it's like a subtropical environment. I mean,
and it is incredible. Because you're now north of the Tropic of Capricorn, so you are into the tropics. Okay.
I've seen pictures of these guys looking upside down. So tell us what's happening here.
Okay. So the chap on the far, what is this, left?
Yes.
If you look through his legs over there, you can see the start of Lake Fundudzi. This is the traditional sacred greeting for the lake. The guide will recite the incantation. Everybody is required to be able to look at the lake while he recites the incantation, and then you may start your photographs. In fact, I can tell you that this photograph would have been a posed photograph because the guides don't even know, they take this greeting of the lake so seriously that they don't even allow you to take photographs of the original greeting of the lake. It is something that the locals do, and it is part of the condition for tourists to visit is that the tourists fit in with the local traditions and customs.
I'm sure it's met with lots of laughter at times because I'm sure people don't understand, you know, what is this greeting or tradition all about? So
absolutely, and that is one of the reasons why having a guide who is well versed in discussing matters with tourists is so very, very important in these areas. The second gentleman with the shaven head is Nelson Mapaha, who is the manager of Fundudzi camp and our senior guide up there. And he is a wealth of knowledge, and it makes an enormous difference to visiting these sacred cultural sites. These are not sacred cultural sites in a classic Western idiom with churches and buildings. These are natural sites. They are places where people live, where they fish, where they, you know, it's part of their lives, but the place also has a number of sacred symbologies. It is at a geological level, it is South Africa's only freshwater lake. And it has the headwaters for a river called the Mutali River, which flows through to into the Luvuvu River, which goes into northern Kruger. So having visited Lake Fundudzi is part of a triumvirate of 3 different sites: Lake Fundudzi, the sacred forest, and a third place, and I'm having a moment, having lost its name, Papidi. The three of them together have a very important symbology. So we try to take guests to all three to explain them. From there, you go up to the sacred forest. The sacred forest is a small patch of traditional Afro-montane forest that has been preserved for the Bangona people, who are a very small group of people who live within the Vavenda tribes. And this is where they reinter the bodies of the departed. The area is, you may only walk on the road. You may only be there with a guide who will explain to you exactly what the importance and the symbology is of the area. There's only a few kilometers of this. The rest of it around it is now commercial forestry. And it's probably one of the most beautiful, most serene places I have ever been. Quite extraordinary, quite extraordinary.
It looks incredible, and I love forests, so I'd be all over this. I tell you what, I'm learning a lot here already, Eleanor. You're doing a great job, because I didn't know that Fundudzi was our only freshwater lake, and I didn't know that there were tea plantations in the area too. So I think those would be very interesting to go and see firsthand.
And it's an active working tea plantation with a full production facility. I've been around it. And they make a lovely tea called Midi tea, M-I-D-I.
Okay.
And then one of the visible things the Venda people are so famous for is the fabulous Venda dance, and the dance called the Domba dance. We have a relationship with a group of ladies in a village called Makwarani. They do probably the most extraordinary alfresco dinner dance experience you will have anywhere in the world. Usually at least 24 of them. They have a 3/4 of an hour to an hour-long performance of a range of different traditional Venda dances, the Domba dance, the Chukumbela, the Malende. They also will insist on guests joining them and teaching them how to dance. And then either before or afterwards, depending on the time, they will actually cook you a meal, al fresco. All the food that is cooked there is food that they have grown in their gardens, in their homes locally.
Wow.
What's particularly interesting about this particular group of women is that they are considered amongst their community to be the best of all cultural dance groups in Venda. So they are highly sought after in their own communities to attend weddings, to attend special events. So there's nothing made for tourists about this experience. I asked the ladies once why it is that they do performances for tourists since they are so busy doing work within their own communities, and they explained that we pay quite well, and this extra money has meant that they can get new outfits, they can buy themselves new drums, and because they are able to get an income in from the tourists, they are getting more value out of the rest of their work in their own communities. And this is one of the things about the whole Limpopo area that we work with. The Hakwe Lodge, Fundudzi, which is part of the African Ivory Route, a number of the other ones, they are all places where the economic benefit goes to the local community. There's no leakage of money out of this area.
That's good.
So when you pay for that dance, it goes into their bank account, and you can know that next time you come, there's a new drum, there's a new outfit, etc.
Awesome.
Yeah, fabulous.
Before you move on from this slide, maybe you can let everybody know more about the pup that these ladies prepare for everybody, and the different types of pup that they prepare.
Okay, so the right in front of us, this lady is cooking a pap. Now, pap is maize. It is a finely ground maize. Sometimes there's both yellow and white available. Sometimes there is only yellow available. They do not make sorghum pap. That is in different parts of Limpopo. Up here, we only have the maize pap. But what's really interesting about these ladies is that there is a story that they, as the cook, tell the person to whom they are giving the food based on how they put the pap onto the plates.
Oh.
So if she is a young woman and she is interested in the man, she has a particular shape that she places the pap. If she is an older woman, and she wants to tell her husband that she's had enough of him and it's time that he gets another wife, she has a different shape to the pap she puts in the plate. There's an entire language that goes in how the pap ends up on the plate.
So I'd be quite scared to go for dinner.
Well, not long ago, I was there with three lovely Australian ladies, and the chief up here had one look at one of the daughters and said, I think she can stay, and I'll give the mom this. She looked up and said, "That'll be 20 cattle." You said, "No, I don't think so."
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, lovely, warm, open, friendly, comfortable people. I travel up here by myself quite frequently. Never felt the slightest bit of discomfort.
That's
Very
awesome.
warm, friendly area.
That's great.
So as we're heading north, because we've now gone over the edge of the Soutpansberg Mountains, we're now ending up in what is effectively the floodplains before the Limpopo River. And this is the world of the baobab. It is much drier than that green area that you've just seen down in the Fundudzi area. This is the area where you are going to meet the baobab guardians. Awalani Lodge is going to be your home. It is only 12 kilometers outside Kruger National Park. So it is an ideal place for tourists to stay who are looking to be going into Kruger Park as well. And in terms of this itinerary, we will move you through that area. So Awalani is in a wooded area. We have at least 30 different species of trees within a 1 kilometer area of the lodge, and significantly a major number of seriously big baobabs. In fact, just down the road is the Sekgole baobab, which is the largest baobab in the world.
That is an incredible tree. Wow.
It is absolutely. And you know what's fascinating here, Warren? Do you know that it's not a tree?
Okay.
Do you know that according to botanists, it's actually a succulent? It's like, I can't get my brain around this thing being a succulent.
Well, that's an incredibly large succulent.
Yeah, no,
Wow.
Yeah.
That is very impressive though. Wow.
On the Awalani property, we have a number of traditional old grange storage areas that were part of the vendor traditions. We have some rock art. In fact, I'm going to give you a link for a beautiful video that we have showing the rock art and the traditional dance up in this area, which I'd love you to share with everybody.
Great.
We also have a beautiful, beautiful cave where you can have dinner in the evening. We have a routine for providing a braai or a barbecue, as would be called.
Yeah.
And this then is the view at the Pafuri picnic site, which is just in northern Kruger. So 12 kilometers into the gate of Kruger, and then I think about a half-hour trip over to the Pafuri picnic site, where you can sit and have your picnic breakfast, your picnic lunch. Just to help with the geography, the other side of the river is where Return Africa's concession is.
Okay.
This side of the river is same animals, just as beautiful. Yeah. I've sat here for many hours. It's considered one of the birding hotspots of Southern Africa, and you have people sitting there the entire day just to watch the birds.
Wow.
Regularly see elephants, hippo, buffalo, beautiful area.
Fantastic. Wow.
So
your staff at Awolani would then assist with drives into the northern part of the Kruger? If
we
need be?
are able to arrange it. Now, I was going to chat just now about the use of guides. Maybe now's an ideal point to talk about it.
Okay.
I think the very best way to run a trip like this is, in fact, to have a guide from start to finish.
Mm-hmm.
There is so much to see and to understand and to learn along the road, not just at the places of interest that you're going to. You're going to miss out on 50% of the value of the trip if you don't have a guide.
Yeah.
We can either arrange that you have a fully, our vehicles, driver guide, etc., or if your guests would like to drive, hop-in guide into the vehicle. But because we have the links and the relationships are all the way along, what I advocate is that you don't have the same guide the entire way around. You actually change guides as you move into different areas. So up in this area, we would make sure you have a guide. We have a guide with you who has a Big 5 qualification and who has that specialist knowledge of the bush. Whereas when you're down at Fundudzi, you want a vendor cultural expert with you. And as we get to the next part of the trip and moving into the world of Tsonga, I'd like to put a Tsonga specialized guide with you so that you have the very best of that local experience. These guides live here. They grew up here. They're going to show you their homes. They're going to show you where they went to school, where their church is, etc. And the engagement is so much more interesting. There's nothing rote about it.
That makes a lot of sense. I think you'll definitely get the most out of the area from a local guide. So having 2 or 3 or 4 during the trip, it makes sense.
Yeah, and they work together. They work to the same operational standards. They work for the same organization, so that they're not strangers to each other.
Okay.
So having come out of Kruger, this particular itinerary, I'd recommend you come out through the Punda Maria Gate. You come down through the Tsonga world. You are effectively coming down the western side of Kruger National Park. You're coming through the local Tsonga villages. And here's an opportunity to stop at a place called the Tomo Heritage Site. It is the only place on the whole route which is actually designed as almost a living museum, but not quite. This is a place where there's the most fabulous storyteller I think I've met in the whole of Limpopo, a man by the name of Rich Mabunda. Rich will tell you the story of the Tsonga people and their role as the traders, the people who connected the Arab traders of the north with the Tsonga people. This is an area which has a tradition of iron ore smelting. They in fact have a recreated iron ore smelter, and if you want to spend 24 hours there, you can try and make some iron ore. Just understand something, best you are seriously fit, because those bellows have to go 24/7.
Wow.
And you need at least 3, if not 4 people at a time. This is a serious collaborative effort to make iron in the old traditional Tsonga ways.
So they don't take turns. It's 3 or 4 people at the same time.
Well, the last time I was there, I noticed that they were a group of about 10, and they were doing about 20 minutes on, 20 minutes off. Wow. They pace themselves. But it definitely becomes part of the get fit ceremonies.
Yeah.
And in fact, as you can imagine, it then is traditionally run through the night. It is traditionally run in winter because those are the slightly cooler times of the year, because it can get pretty jolly warm over here. Yeah. This Tomo Heritage Site also has people who will teach you to make beads. These were ladies sitting learning to make beads from glass, which I just find wonderful to be able to get right into the detail of what it is. It's not only about buying beadwork, but it's also about actually getting into making the bead itself. So we need to plan these activities. You certainly need at least 4 hours to get to grips with the skills of making beads. We need to plan these activities into the day. because having left the Tsomo Heritage Site, I'll then take you down to Baleni to meet the salt harvesters.
There's a lot to do in this area.
It's extraordinary, Warren. It's extraordinary. And I mean, people say to me, oh, you know, I want a 3-day itinerary, and I kind of want to cry because, you want a 3-week itinerary over here.
Yeah.
But
no, we get the same thing every day. You know, how much time do you have? Well, we only have 10 days. Oh man, you know, that's just enough to scratch the surface. But we can only promise that you'll be back.
Yeah, quite. But one of the great advantages about the number of different things there are to do over here is that if for any reason one of the activities is not available, there's no dearth of other options. So you're not caught with a great big hole in the itinerary.
Okay.
The ladies
so tell us about the Baleni Salt. Sorry to interrupt, because I've heard so much about this Baleni area. So I'm very interested to know more about it.
So there is a geothermal hot spring that has water coming up from a subterranean level. It is at 42 degrees Celsius. And it is highly saline, not just with NaCl, but also with magnesium, potassium, calcium, and chloride, sodium, sulfate.
Okay.
Those are the main lot. This water, this hot spring is the only geothermal hot spring that is left in Southern Africa that has not been converted into a swimming pool. It is completely natural the way Mother Nature made it. The water seeps into the local riverbanks and leaves a white crust on the riverbanks. These ladies, following a tradition that they learned from their mother and their mother before them, and according to archaeologists for more than 2,000 years back, they are still following the identical tradition. Literally the only difference with today's salt harvesting versus the old days, you'll see they use plastic buckets to catch their water today. In the old days, it would have been clay pots.
Okay.
That's the only change to the system.
Okay.
They scrape the white crust off the riverbed. They mix it with river sand. They put it in these filters that they have made from, these are what are called Kieselgeer filters. You'll find many, when you did science at school and you did filters, this was probably the first basic kind of filter that you used. It's got clay and it's got leaves. Fetch water from the river, and then you start filtering, and you may filter it 5 or 10 times until the water is running clear through the filter. And then that saline solution is put into a container over a fire and boiled until you're left with salt.
Wow.
It is as simple and as extraordinarily complex as that. These ladies welcome tourists. In fact, they absolutely love having tourists, and they will spend as long with you as you have got the stamina to, because believe you me, this is about stamina. You know, there's an expression in the English language that refers to hard work. It's called going to the salt mines.
Yes, yes.
Oh, there's a good reason for that expression.
Yeah.
This is hard work. Standing over a vat of saline water that is busy boiling like that, you know how much that stuff's all going straight up into your eyes. It's pretty jolly hard work. But at the end of the day, you end up with your beautiful handful of salt. It's a lovely creamy colored salt. It is in modern explanations, it's a low sodium salt because it has the other elements with it. It has the magnesium and the potassium, etc. So those add to make the salty flavor, so you don't need as much of the NaCl in the process. Okay. It is lovely with food. It is used by a number of our top chefs in South Africa for special dishes. But of specific interest for these ladies is they also make it for the local traditional healers, and it is used as part of the traditional medicines of Southern Africa. And when you look at what the chemical elements are, the uses are largely absolutely understood and the same as Western medicine, because the magnesium in it is used to help people with aches and pains in their body, and the potassium is used to help lower people's blood pressure from a traditional use point of view. There are other uses as well, but it is magnificent.
Okay. And it's packaged up in the area and then sold locally?
Yes, currently they only package it in bulk. There is one salt shipper who takes it, and it is currently only sold in bulk. If you want to buy small quantities, go to Baleni to buy it yourself. Last year, I can tell you that last year we sold out. They cannot harvest during the summer because this is a summer rainfall area and the salts dissolve. And I think from about late November, there was no salt left. And they've only just started harvesting again. So they certainly sell their whole production out.
Sure. Cool. Beautiful
artisanal fashion. Now their children are the children who are the Shigubu dancers, the local Shigubu dancers, the men, extraordinary fit young men. And their love is also the Shibbolani dance. These are my favorite Aussie friends who, having watched the entire performance, then said, thank you, we're going to try now. And they discovered that the Shibbolani skirts are really, really hard. But this is where, if you go to a dance performance, you're in the courtyard of somebody's home. You know, this isn't something that's done in the stadium. And in fact, I can tell you there were about 400 people here. We had 3 tourists, myself and a guide, and about 400 of the local community who came to watch the dancing and participate in the music. So it's a wonderfully engaging experience.
Okay. And where would you stay in this part of the...
Baleni has a lovely little camp. I was trying very hard not to get into too much detail about the accommodation, but also little rondawels with en-suites. Solar lighting, very comfortable, and yeah, beautiful, quiet in the mopani trees. I remember once being there midsummer and getting woken at about 3:30 in the morning with the most amazing dawn chorus of birds. I mean, I literally thought something was going on outside. I couldn't believe my ears when I realized that this was actually just the local birds. Beautiful, beautiful place.
Yeah, I think it's great to have more traditional accommodation at some point in the itinerary. So, you know, to get a traditional rondavel in an area like this, just a fantastic experience. So something that people mustn't shy away from. You know, get in for a night and experience it for what it is.
If we look at this itinerary, we've taken you through Nhakwe Lodge, 4-star with all the modern facilities that you would expect. Fundudzi with the rondavels. Awalani, 3-star, also with Wi-Fi, air conditioning, televisions, all those bits and pieces. Back down to Baleni with rondavels. And then the last place I'm going to talk about in this itinerary is Mtumeni Camp. And that is a traditional Big 5 area safari tents. En-suite, comfortable, not plush, but beautifully comfortable. Also owned by the African Ivory Route. The guides are all colleagues as we go around this itinerary. And the key activity here is walking. Our guides take people out on morning walks. There's nothing like actually putting your feet 1 foot in front of the other in a Big 5 area, learning to shut up and listen to really experience the area. We do
I'm with you. It's awesome. Walking safaris, by far the ultimate safari experience. Fantastic.
We do afternoon game drives as well. This is in a greater Kruger reserve called Letaba Ranch. It's unfenced from Kruger, but not in Kruger. And the 12-unit, 24-bed Mtumeni camp is the only place in the entire reserve. So it is an incredibly quiet, restful experience. And this is the place for the perfect end to the day. I don't know that there's a more quintessential African safari moment than sitting around the fire in the Lapa at the end of the day.
No, there isn't. You're right. And we're very fortunate. I mean, you and I get to experience these lodges, you know, a lot through the year, and it's the most fantastic way to end a day in the bush, you know, with the local people. So, yeah.
Absolutely.
There's one thing I forgot to mention when we were talking about the Baleni Salt is, I know Glenn did mention that one of our top local restaurants in Franschhoek was using it. Is there any way we can get it through TFPD? Is it available for purchase online, perhaps?
Yes, I'm busy. We're just having a little bit of a lockdown problem with communications at the moment, because I have literally hundreds of orders sitting in my inbox from people who've been emailing me all year. I've been saving them up. So I'm about to organize a system for getting the salt out. You can buy it through Oryx Salt. So anybody wants to email you, I will send you through initially to Oryx Salt, who ship in bulk for the restaurants.
Okay.
It is not a cheap salt. That process is incredibly backbreaking. It is incredibly slow. This is a very, very specialized artisanal salt. This is special high days and holidays salt.
Well, hopefully I get you some orders, and I hope it doesn't create some logistical nightmares for you with our guests all over the world wanting to try it themselves. But yeah,
our guests you need to bring your guests. Let them buy their salt on the day. You know, it's one of those things that you can take home with you. It doesn't have customs restrictions to it. So you take your salt home and you bought it from the lady who actually made it.
Cool. Fantastic, Eleanor. I tell you what, I've certainly learnt an absolute ton, and I've been making notes right the way through the discussion. So I've got a lot to think about, and how I discuss this with so many people that I know are looking for, you know, experiences that are off the normal routes. Can I ask you just to stop sharing here so we can get you back on screen? Do you mind? Is that the last slide, or have you got anything else?
Yes, it was.
Ah, well, there we go. Good timing.
Now, what have I done?
Oh, no, it's okay.
You are screen sharing. How do I stop share? You just hit the button that says stop
share
and it works.
No, it's all good. So, yeah, as I said, I think people are going to find the whole area of Limpopo hell of interesting, and it's got so much to offer. Probably culture, the number one experience for me. Go and learn from the local people. You know, just after speaking to you for 40 odd minutes, I'm like, wow, I've let myself down actually, because I haven't been to this area actually.
And what I didn't emphasize was that depending on how if you add Mkhuba's Kloof and what is fundamentally a very Western culture over there in, you have gone through 4 different cultures in that trip. Because around Nahakwe area, you have the Sepedi speaking people, Robola Art Route, and over at Baleni, you have the Tonga people, and up north, you have the Venda people. And then the Mkhuba's Kloof area is a general, more Western English Afrikaans area. Okay. So every day, you're dealing with a different culture. It's not like it's a one and done culture.
I think that sums up South Africa, which we're so very fortunate to have. You know, it truly is the Rainbow Nation. Now my dog is going to come and say hi.
Hello,
she's been wanting to say hi the whole interview. Okay, yeah. Julie, you go. Yeah, I think we'll end off there, and I just want to thank you so much. You certainly have a wealth of knowledge, and your passion is really evident about this fantastic area in South Africa. And I've no doubt that I'm going to get a ton of interest and loads of questions, which I'm going to have to forward on to you for answering until I get there myself, which will hopefully be soon.
Absolutely. So, and just to clarify for, you know, sort of more technical trade questions, you can either drive up from Gauteng, you can add this as an add-on after a traditional Kruger safari. You can fly into either Polokwane or into Hoedspruit and take it from there. so you know your areas of entry are quite simple. The actual area itself is definitely ground transfer. You're not going to, there are no other solutions. It's not buses, it's not trains, it's vehicles. My recommendation is always with guides, although it is possible to self-drive, of course it is, but you know, the optimal recommendation is with self-drives. And really, you know, you can add on one night to Baleni if that's all you've got time for, or you can add on a 4-night trip, have a fabulous time, or take it up to 10 or 12 nights, you know, so it extends.
And what time of year should you be traveling to this area, or is it all year?
It's all year, different beauty for different type of the year. The summer season is the rainy season, so it's possibly the weakest time of the year. It does also get incredibly hot up towards Porphyry. But October, November is a great time of the year for birding. I think if you go from Easter, early March, April, through to about August, September, that's your hot spot. It's the summer area is the summertime is more beautiful because of the greenery, but you can have grey leaden skies the whole way.
Yeah. Fantastic. Eleanor, I just want to thank you again. Really cool to chat to you. We all certainly learned a lot. We're looking forward to visiting one day, hopefully in the near future. And yeah, we look forward to chatting to you again soon. I know that I've been discussing some 4x4 experiences and one of your other properties called Witsieshoek in the Drakensberg with Kieran. So I'm going to rope him in for discussion very soon. And then we've touched on most of the TFPD brand, which is quite exciting. So looking forward to seeing how we develop and how we can send some more of our clients your way. So cool.
Excellent.
Thank you so much.
We look forward to sharing time with them. Cheers.
Good.
Cheers, Warren.
Cheers.
Good night.
Thanks, Eleanor. Right. Good night.